I too now have experienced the smattering of don't be political. And it's hard to communicate to people that like money is inherently political and like policy is going to impact your finances probably more than just about anything else is going to. So
yeah,
I want to hear from you about that.
I didn't used to talk about politics, although I have always been politically interested. But I did a complete 180 on that around 2016. And so I started to speak out and people got pissed. Well, let me tell you what happened. When I started speaking out about, extremist politics, and I've always told people that I'm happy to pay my taxes, and they look at me like I'm a Martian because it doesn't compute. First of all, they see a man. Then they see a man who's made a lot of money.
Yep.
And then a man who says, I'm actually happy to pay my taxes. And in fact, I've lived in New York City and California, and it's great. And the more I pay, the more successful I've been. They cannot fathom it. And so when I started speaking out, about 90% of my audience was surprised and supportive. 10% got extremely mad. And their arguments are frankly pathetic. And I keep waiting. Is there going to be a troll with some intelligence? Please. I'm like eating popcorn with one hand and just responding. I go, why? Can't we at least, you want to debate? Let's debate. And I have all these debates with trolls. I enjoy it because I don't get the chance to talk to people like that in my normal life. My normal life has friends who are management consultants and internet people, not radicalized extremists, but I enjoy it. And what I want to say for the folks who tell me, stick to money. I go, listen, money is as inherently political as it gets. Yep. The reason your housing is so expensive is money. The reason people buy F-450s now and there's no small trucks is political. The reason that climate change is happening is in part political. Healthcare being expensive is political. So when you tell me stick to personal finance, first of all, fuck off. I write about what I want. I don't listen to some guy in Oakley's telling me what to write about. Why would I listen to you? And second, money is political by definition. And so you over here agonizing about $3 coffees. Meanwhile, the price of housing exceeding the 28% ratio, way above it. Families can't even afford housing. In 0 cities across the country can someone earning minimum wage hit those numbers safely, which means it's unaffordable. And you're over here telling me stick to personal finance. Personal finance and money is inherently political. There's no denying that. And if you try, you are willfully ignoring reality.
The taxes thing kills me because
they love it.
you're a super rich guy who is super outspoken about you need to raise taxes on me. I should have to pay more. And it's always funny because you know who's in the comments being like, I don't want my taxes How much do you make? $75K. We're not talking about you.
We're not talking about you. They don't want your taxes. They want mine. And really, they want the ultra rich, which is what they should do. So, the responses to these are quite facile. If you want to send more money to the government, you can feel free. I go, no amount of voluntary contributions by a few rich people is ever going to equal a well-enforced tax. And if you raise taxes, then the rich will just evade it. I go, if they were going to do that, why would they be fighting so hard against tax increases? Think about it. Yeah. And the fact that taxes are historically low for the rich is simply just unaccounted for. They just simply refuse to look at it. So what I've discovered, I enjoy the trolls. I like them in the sense that, we all have our own entertainment, I guess. But they're not the ones who need to be convinced. That's not how it works. Voting matters. That's why when we had our last election, I funded over $100,000 of my own money to get people to the polls. And I wanted people to have no reason to not have transportation. And that is an area where I can pull out my checkbook and write a fat check and support voting rights. That's what I want. And so that's my rich life. That's part of what I'm using my money for. And so, politics matter to me. And it matters to me that people can vote. It matters to me that people can get housing, that they can get healthcare. Yes, that matters to me.
I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. I love it. How do you think about the balance between individual solutions and systemic change in your work? You've kind of touched on this, but I'm curious if you have anything else that you want to say about it.
I do. I think that, part of my IWT philosophy is that you can simultaneously call for personal responsibility with your money and call for systemic change. I think this is really important. The personal finance world in general skews towards personal responsibility. And that is primarily because the people who are writing about personal finance tend to have become more responsible and then gone out and spread the quote gospel about, I did it, I paid off my debt, you can do it too. And I think that part of that is very good. Personal finance folks have taken the mantle of responsibility and they've done great things. I love that. At the same time, you know who's absent in those conversations? People who have a sick child or parent they have to take care of. Somebody who has to work 3 jobs and they live an hour and a half away because they can't afford it and it takes them 3 hours on the bus. They're not on Twitter posting about their FIRE strategy and their Monte Carlo analysis, okay? They're working.
Yeah.
And if we are real, you can't simply suggest that people have become less responsible in the last 30 years. That's just not, that doesn't make any sense if you understand statistics. What has happened is the price of housing has gone up primarily because of NIMBYs, and healthcare costs have gone way up. And there's a variety of other things. When you look at those and you look at the primary drivers between why people are going bankrupt, et cetera, you see that it's structural. So yeah, when I talk to people on my podcast or on the show, I'm focused on what can we do in your personal life, right? We can't change healthcare policy right now. But when I'm speaking out, and what I want people to remember when they vote is you can save an extra 3%, but that's not going to prevent the price of houses from going way up in your neighborhood because your neighbors don't allow more housing to be built. In other words, we can acknowledge the need for personal responsibility as well as the need for structural reform.
Retweet. Oh, I love it. It's so refreshing too to hear somebody at your level talking so candidly about this, because I think when I think about icons of the past, we'll say, they reach this level of business success, but then they really just double down on the individual responsibility language. And it's, if I can do it, you can do it. It's like, bro, you have $100 million. The change that you can make now from your purview is so much greater than doubling down on this idea that, you know, everything is your fault or your responsibility at the individual level. So to hear that you're thinking that way is really incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope that it inspires other people as they become more successful, more outspoken. I hope that it inspires parents with their children to recognize that the people who don't have money are not lazy or stupid. I was one unlucky decision away from being in a completely different scenario than I am. And so is any of us. I grew up with 2 loving parents in the United States. I was educated in public schools until I went to college, which I paid for through scholarships. So many lucky things had to happen in order for me to be here. And did I work? Yeah, I worked. I worked really hard. I still work hard, but I was also lucky. And what I wish in this world is that life was just a little easier for us. That if one of us gets in a car accident, it doesn't destroy us financially. That if one of us gets in an accident walking somewhere, that it doesn't destroy us financially from a healthcare perspective. I'm not asking for everyone to have a private jet and to be a billionaire, but I wish it was just a little easier, especially for the most vulnerable people in our society.